Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I want to go ahead and let we have three of our counselors here with us. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then I'm actually just going to turn it over to them. So why don't we start with Ms. Shoopman. Jill, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, my name is Jill Shoopman. I'm a counselor for students whose last names are DU through LED. And then next we have Miss Rodriguez-Garcia.
Good morning, Natalie Rodriguez-Garcia, and my part of the alpha is Nguyen, first name N to Z. So Nguyen all the way to SO is my part.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Chen Tu Nguyen, and I'm the counselor for students with last name from LEE to Nguyen, first name M. So the rest of the Nguyen from Miss Rodriguez-Garcia.
All right, great, thank you. So we're going to be talking a lot about the senior year today, and I'm going to let, all right, Ms. Shoopman, you can share your screen.
Sure. So I've got my very messy desktop.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We had all the students who lost their transcripts ask us for copies during, so that's why there's so many saved on there. So I just want to quickly show you where to find all of our presentations. And so on the Piedmont Hills website, if you start on the main page, we are the counseling department. So you'd find all of our information under counseling. And then for presentations specifically, if you scroll down to presentations, after we're done with each, we will post them here unless the presenter doesn't allow it. Occasionally the college reps don't allow us to post, but if they do, we will have them here. So we already have all the student presentations listed because those have all passed. We have had all of the parents' presentations posted minus the 11th grade. That one's coming up on October 13th. And then as we have our college application presentations, they're going to populate in here. So this is a really important link for you to have, which is again to all of our presentations. And I did send that out on School Loop yesterday evening. And so the other thing I want to show you is this schedule is a clickable link. So if you click on the schedule, it will take you to a page that shows you all of the different presentations, and each presentation has a hyperlink. And so you can click and get all the information about how to attend, time, what it's about. So we do have quite a few things coming up for our seniors. And so for the CSU UC application, and PIQ stands for Personal Insight Questions. That's the essay portion for the UC application. All of these workshops are upcoming. All of them do require pre-registration. So if your son or daughter has not already done so, we encourage you to have them pre-register. So if you're wanting to know about an upcoming event, this schedule is very helpful. Again, these are all hyperlinks to all of the information you need to attend. And so the topic that we talked about on Tuesday, it was Senior Information Night. And so there were two parts. The first part was graduation and college information, making sure they're on track, obviously, first to graduate, and second for whatever post-high school plan they have. Making sure they know what workshops are coming up that are applicable to them, any changes or updates, important resources, and events that are coming up for them. And then the second half was the financial aid portion, and we had a financial aid advisor from Evergreen Valley College with us in each session. So we were lucky enough to have an English, Spanish, and Vietnamese version, and those have all been posted here for financial aid. So I do want to let you know that Ms. Rodriguez and Ms. Nguyen and I are not financial aid advisors. So hopefully you had a chance to read in your email yesterday that we'll be very limited in what we can answer in terms of financial aid individual questions today. For that, we would encourage you to go to their hands-on workshops that are called CAP for College. And the very first one is on October 3rd. And so what I'm going to do, because we might reference it, I'm going to go ahead and open the parent presentation portion that is not financial aid, because again, that's what we're going to be able to best answer today. So let me open that for us just in case we want to refer. There was one update. So for our senior parents, there was one thing that we couldn't answer for you that has been updated since. So since San Jose State is our closest school, our local area school, they have basically lower criteria for getting in if you graduate from East Side. So if you're an East Side graduate, but they didn't know the cutoff as of the night we presented. They told us the next morning, so they were close, but just not in time for our presentation. So if you're a parent of a senior who is considering San Jose State, I want to real quick show you this information since it's new after the presentation. And so what happens is first they look to see if your child can be admitted to their major. And so they apply to their major. Some majors are not competitive. There's plenty of space for everyone. So the minimum cutoff could be quite low. It could be closer to that 2.0. But for students that are applying to really competitive majors, if they don't get into their major, for East Side, they will consider them for undecided or undeclared, and they will have a lower cutoff than for students outside of the area. So the cutoff GPA that they have set is 2.75. So a student from East Side that has a 2.75 weighted or above GPA and applies by the deadline would be guaranteed a spot, but guaranteed a spot in undecided or undeclared. Okay.
Yes.
So that was the only update that we have had since the presentation. And so what I want to do is I want to open it up to questions from anything that we have covered. And let me get to the chat. So Ms. Davis, do you typically have them ask verbally or do they put it in the chat when they have questions?
Either or, you know, if somebody wants to raise their hand, we don't have that big of a group. So if somebody wants to just like, you know, unmute themselves and ask a question, that would work. Or if they want to put something in the chat, either way.
That sounds great. So if you're brave, feel free to unmute. If you're kind of shy, we don't mind chat. So I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. So one thing that did come up while people are thinking of their questions, Ms. Davis, is they wanted to know if there's any update on spring semester. Yeah. No,
no, not right at this moment. The district is, you know, currently working on the, you know, plan for, you know, being able to bring students back. The plan is very limited, being that we are a high school district and a lot of the current, you know, restrictions set by the county and by the state, you know, they're really more geared towards elementary schools, to be completely honest, where you can keep a group of students with one teacher, you know, in one cohort. So that, you know, for an elementary school where they tend to have just one teacher, that works. In a high school where they have 6 teachers, it's actually not, it doesn't work for high schools. So what we're looking at is, you know, being really, really limited and only select students that are really struggling or really need some additional support. And honestly, we're not looking at that until, you know, maybe, you know, you're talking about spring semester, maybe January. I think everybody needs to really prepare themselves mentally that we're in distance learning for the long haul and the entire school year. You know, that certainly has not been decided, but that's what my expectation is, that this is where we are for the entire school year. So, you know, I think we just need to prepare for that. I know that the superintendent is planning, if you guys pay attention ever to the board meetings and that stuff, the October board meeting, which is October 22nd, is when the superintendent is supposed to unveil the task force plan on, you know, what is our plan for returning. So a question came up in the chat. If a student has questions about application or the essay, can a student get help from the counselors? Will counselors help the students review application or essay? Jill, you're muted.
That's a great question. So yes, we will. So a couple things. Remember, it's very important that students attend those workshops. And so let me open it up again. So if a student has a question about how to fill out their application, we do want to remind that there are 500 students and, you know, 5 of us. So that's why it's so important that students do attend these workshops. And so if they have questions about the application, the other thing is that we are not the CSU system or UC system. So we want to be careful that they don't miss these workshops and ask questions of us that maybe we don't know how to answer based on the fact that we don't work for that system. So first and foremost, please have seniors come to these workshops. And so the first 2 are the CSU and UC workshop for application. And then this one here is, there's no essay for CSU. This one is the UC personal insight question workshop. So yes, they will get a lot of tips and tricks during this essay workshop. So what we're planning to do again is first have students go to those workshops, and then we're going to have Zoom sessions where students, if they have questions on their application, can come onto a Zoom and go into a breakout room with a counselor. So we would schedule those during those advisory tutorial times so it doesn't interfere with class. And so we'll post those for seniors. So if they do have questions and they need support, they'll be able to go onto a Zoom, and they'll be advertised on several different days, especially as it gets closer to the deadline. So yes, we will help them. In terms of individual review, unfortunately, no, I wouldn't be able to individually review every single student's application for every system. I can answer a question that they have. So what I usually encourage them to do is, maybe ask a parent to sit down with them and review things like, did they enter all their demographic, their name, their address, everything like that correct? And then just ask us those questions that they're not able to answer. And so yes, we're here for questions, we're here for help, but attend those workshops and then attend those Zoom one-on-one sessions later. So that's a great question.
Can I add something? Yes, sometimes students have questions while they work in weekend and they really want to have an answer right away. So I encourage those students to take advantage of the online chat, because there's just an online chat, and also there's this online customer service number. And quite often, sometimes I help students, I don't have the answer, I have to call up that number and ask, and with the student with me on the phone or in person in the past. And those phone numbers really helpful, they help, but don't wait until the last minute, the week before the deadline, there can be a long waiting. But if you start early, that line, that chat and the telephone number is really helpful.
Yes, there's plenty of help. I think the problem that we've had in years past is getting students to the workshops. So, we'll offer application help workshops, and we'll have maybe 3 students that take advantage of it out of 500. And then they're usually during Thanksgiving vacation sending us a lot of emails because they've waited until the last minute. So as a parent, you could probably help them set earlier deadlines so that we're available to support them if they get stuck. So please help them not wait until the holiday.
And just kind of piggybacking off of that, every year we kind of, push really hard, don't wait to the last minute. And it's not a cliche, it's for real. The system crashes every year. Students have a hard time submitting it if they wait until the weekend where everyone's submitting it. They can start on their applications right now. They can't submit them right now, but they can start on them. And that way, when they can start submitting them, they can submit it on the first day where it's open, the open window. And then less stress, they don't have to worry about it. So if they're prepared, that's the way to go, because that last weekend is really rough.
Yeah, I would just tag on to that. This is the second year where we have this fall break, and this is actually a really great time for seniors to use that next week to get their applications started, and take advantage of the fact that there's no school next week. That is a really great idea for them. Jill, did you want to read the next question?
So this is a great question for UCs. If you apply for a certain major, for example, under the engineering department, and you are not selected, will your application be passed on to other departments and have a chance of being admitted as undeclared if you're a strong candidate? And the difficulty is that's up to the campus. So some campuses do have you put an alternate major, and if you're not admitted to your first choice, you are considered for that alternate major. Other campuses don't do that, and if you're not admitted to your first choice, you're not considered. And so unfortunately, I wish there was a generic answer, but they still do things differently. So you would have to check for the specific UC you're applying, whether or not they will consider you for your alternate, or if they even allow an alternate major. And also whether or not they have the undeclared. One thing you want to also keep in mind is, sometimes students will get very committed to a certain campus, and then they don't get into the major of their choice at that campus, and they have to make some decisions. If they're admitted to engineering at another campus, and the one that they were most excited to go to, they're admitted as undeclared, I would usually encourage students to choose the campus where they're admitted to engineering. Because the problem is, if you're undeclared, you're oftentimes blocked out of classes, prerequisite classes for a popular major, nursing, engineering, etc. And so for some of those students, they're really putting themselves at a disadvantage by going undeclared. if they're going to then be prohibited from taking those prerequisite classes they need if their heart is really set on engineering. Whereas again, if another campus can give you a spot in engineering, I'd hate to have them lose that opportunity. But unfortunately, there is no generic answer for the UCs. Some do consider alternate majors, some don't consider alternate major. That's the hard part for us as counselors is most campuses are not consistent. And so parents will ask us questions, but there's no consistency within their system. So it's a challenge to give any generic answer for UCs or CSUs. Other counselors, did you want to add anything to that?
I would just like to reiterate, going with the engineering campus that accepted your student, because most engineering programs are impacted, meaning that they have a lot more applicants than there are spaces. So the fact that they got into an engineering program is really big. So yeah, absolutely stick with the engineering program versus going undeclared, because there's no guarantee.
I have a question for you guys as the parent of a senior in high school. Can you guys touch on just the differences this year, with the pandemic and, especially where a lot of school districts, Eastside didn't do pass fail last year, but a lot of school districts, like my daughter's school district, did do pass fail. My daughter, I don't know about you guys, well, actually, because we were able to squeeze in the school day SAT 2 weeks before everything shut down, actually most of our kids do have the SAT, but my daughter never has taken the SAT. And so can you guys touch on like what the differences are with the application process this year? And it's particularly this class and the class of 2021 that's like the most affected by these changes.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to jump in, or do you want me to do that?
I think you may want to share the slide. We have a specific PowerPoint slide about that.
You want the quick reference link that shows
Yes.
Okay.
It's told somewhere okay, right there, 11.
And then would you like to cover, or do you
Yes,
want?
I can answer that. Yes. So here we have this one. I think it's very convenient for students. We have a quick comparison between the three, actually four, including community college, the four different system and the requirements. So for private college, because of their different policies and a lot of change recently, just like Ms. Davis mentioned. So we encourage you to check individual website for the SAT and ACT requirement for private college. So because the question is not about recommendation, so I just focus on the SAT and ACT, right? So for UC, it's official that they do not require, class of 2021 are not required to take SAT or ACT. However, each UC campus still make decision and they not finalized yet for the whole system. Some UC campus say that, test is optional. Some other campus say test blind. So I think this is part that confuse students, and we wish that they have a generic answer for everything. But when we went to the UC conference 2 weeks ago, we asked that question and they answered that because not all of the campus, UC campus, post their decision yet. So you need to check with individual UC campus for their test optional or test blind policy. So this is a quick explanation about test optional and test blind. So test optional, just by the name of it, is optional. You have the option to submit the score or not. And the college still may consider, for example, for scholarship or for some impacted major. And that is optional. But if you choose not to submit or unable to submit, that's fine. It doesn't affect your admission, consideration. And test blind is different. Test blind means that even if you submit it, they won't consider. Nobody look at it. So there's a difference between test optional and test blind. And even though you see, again, they are not required students to take the test, but they still consider if they want to go with test optional and test blind. Some campus already, I know for sure they already post on their website, but some still make decision. So unfortunately, in this case, if you have a strong test score that you want to submit, or you don't have a good test score and you still consider, you have to check out with that specific college. Okay, I hope it's clarified. For CSU, CSU is simple. No test required and test blind for class of 2021. And again, test blind means even if you submit it, we won't look, we won't consider. So simple. However, there's something I want to emphasize. Both systems, UC and CSU, even though they are not required for the score, right? But if you submit the score, they still can use it for the purpose of placement. So placement for English, for writing, and for math. So I think it still help in some way if you want to be put in the right level of your math and writing. And last but not least, it's so simple, community college, but still some students asking, do I need something? Community college do not require anything. SAT, ACT, or any letter. Okay, so I hope it makes sense, but feel free to ask follow-up question if you still want us to clarify. And Ms. Shoopman and Ms. Rodriguez-Garcia, do you want to add something?
I was just going to share that, there's a lot of different factors that college get at. So, SAT or ACT used to be something that was heavily looked at by colleges. And, like Ms. Nguyen said, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're not a great test taker, that's not going to be the case this year. So they're going to have to really look at the other areas more heavily. And so this is UC comprehensive review. So these are the different factors that the UC looks at when making their decision. So obviously we're going to discount the scores on SAT, ACT, because that's not part of it for this year. But they look at their GPA. They look at the number of and content of the A to G classes that they took. Number and performance in UC approved honors, or for us, AP classes. They look at whether or not they're ranked within the top 9% of their school. They look at how strong their senior year is. That's why we tell students don't back off senior year. Make sure you don't overwhelm yourself, but take a challenging schedule. Other academic performance, they look at things like outstanding performance in one academic area. Do they have straight A's in one area, like all English or math? Outstanding work in projects, they look at special talents, they look at, are they part of a science fair? So they look at so many different things. So the things they've looked at in the past, they're of course still looking at now, with the exception of that SAT, ACT. And, our students are in a different situation. Some school districts, like Ms. Davis was saying, went to a pass-fail last spring. If a student earned a pass, they got credit for the A to G, but it didn't, wasn't calculated into their GPA, because you can't calculate the pass grade. So in some ways, if our students finished strong, and I think they had a chance to, because their grades could only go up from March, that benefited our students' GPA more than, a different system where those grades wouldn't have been calculated in. So I'm kind of grateful in some ways that we kept with that system. So I think in general, they're still looking at all the things they would have normally looked at, with the exception of that SAT and ACT. Probably, class of 22 is going to be in the same situation. CSU, the change, because CSU used to just be SAT, ACT, or their GPA. They didn't look at many other factors. So you just took out 50% of what the CSU system generally uses when they make their decision. So for that reason, they are actually going to 2.5 and up, consider them qualified, but 2.0 to 2.49 for the first time. The CSU system is going to start looking at other criteria like the UC does, like those extracurricular AP classes, number of A to G classes beyond the minimum. So that's the one big change for CSU, is they're going to start looking at other factors, because they lost 50% of what they were using when making their decision. So some significant changes for our students, again, that are not fans of test taking. They may be thrilled that that's not going to be heavily weighted. For some of our students who did very well, they may be frustrated because that was a way to shine. So those are some significant changes that'll probably impact 2022 as well. But we're still waiting for our juniors to get some final answers. And then freshmen and sophomores, there's no decisions at this time. We're hoping that it'll be back to business as usual, and they'll have opportunities that are not available this year. And so there's another question in chat. Any other counselors that want to chime in or share anything? Ms. Rodriguez?
Just real quick, the other big component to the application for the UCs is the insight questions. So they also rely heavily on that, because that's where the students can really bring out their character, who they are, what they're about. So the PA keys are also a very important aspect to the application as well.
Absolutely. So that gives them a lot of feedback. And remember, there is a workshop that's available for helping students with those personal insight questions for UC on October 16th. So there's the different questions they get to pick. I think, and I'm not sure this year, in the past years, their teachers also let them, someone was asking about help with their essays, let them do personal insight questions as part of their senior year English class. With all the changes to their curriculum being on distance learning, I'm not positive that's happening this year, but that would be something that the student could ask, is whether or not, if they don't already know the answer, whether or not that's going to be part of their English class for senior year. So one other question that came up is, and this is something that we hear often, can a student put undecided for their major, or just should they put business major in general? That there's a lot of pressure, right, for students to know, and many of them just don't know at this time what they want to pursue after high school. And so it really depends. First, you want to make sure that the campus that they're applying to does have an undecided or undeclared. Most do, but not all. Couple things to note though. If a student knows what they want to do, they very much should put that major, because you want to see if they're going to have an opportunity to pursue that at the school. So if you put undecided, so what was going on in the past was sometimes people would put undecided to try and sneak into a campus and then scoot over into a major that they may not have gotten into originally. So that doesn't really work. So what happens is, if a student goes in as undecided and then tries to switch majors, it may be a very competitive major and they may not get a spot. So now they're blocked, like I said earlier, from those classes. So if they do know what they want to do, they very much should put that down. If a student is just completely uncertain, they don't even have a direction right now that they're going in, then yes, they can go undecided or undeclared. You know, again, once they get there, they may struggle to get into certain classes if those classes are blocked for those who have identified a major. The other thing to know is that, because a lot of teenagers don't know what they want to do yet, undecided and undeclared are very popular majors on a campus, and it can actually be hard to get into. It can be very competitive because they only will accept a certain number of students as undecided or undeclared. So they might be putting themselves into a pretty competitive pool going undecided or undeclared. A lot of students change their major. So if they have a decent idea of what they want to do, they can apply for that major. You may want to, before they commit, if they're really kind of on the fence, check the particular college they're considering change of major policy. So a lot of students, I don't remember what the stats are. I mean, it was a high number, like 80% change their major, or some, you know, outrageous number, because they're so young when they're making those initial decisions. So again, if you know what it is you want to do, please select a major so that you don't get blocked from those classes. If you have no way of knowing, you can do undecided or undeclared, but just note that you will be, you know, that is competitive. There are a lot of people in that situation, so you might actually struggle to get into a campus undecided or undeclared. And so, Ms. Rodriguez or Nguyen, anything else you'd want to add on that?
Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Excuse me. Don't know what happened there. They actually had a workshop. The UCs had a workshop on that, majors, careers, and that was one of the topics that, you know, a lot of students are afraid to put undeclared because then they feel that they won't be accepted. And that's not the case, because they understand, again, their age, and they want them to commit to the major. They don't want them to waste time taking business classes and then later on change it to art or whatever, a completely different major. So it's not a bad thing. They can put that if they're not sure, but they know that they want to be at a UC or CSU, whatever it might be, then that's fine.
You want to add, Ms. Nguyen? I see Ms. Nguyen's lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, because I tried to look at my note on UC conference. You hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm because I have a note on my UC conference, and I look back at the exact note I wrote, because a lot of questions counselor asked, is that going to be negatively affect the student when they say undeclared, and UC prep answer right there, no, it's okay, no, it doesn't, no negatively affect. So it's okay to put undeclared, because if you really don't know, but just like Miss Shoopman mentioned, if you do know, just put your major in.
Yeah. Well, and a good example of looking at that is the Spartan Eastside Promise that we just talked about. So the minimum to get into the CSU is a 2.5. But if a student is doing undeclared for San Jose State, it's 2.75. And so it really depends on the campus, whether or not it's, whether or not the bar is higher for undeclared or not. But again, like they were saying, if it's something that they just don't know, please don't have them, force a major if they really don't know what it is they want to do. But don't use it as a way to sneak into a campus if they do know, because they may be disappointed later if they can't switch over because they're not meeting the cutoff. So I think that was the only thing in chat. Does anyone want to add something to chat, or do they want to unmute and ask a question? We have a shy group this morning.
Either that or we did a pretty good job on our presentation.
Is that it? Yes.
Hey, you guys.
Or they all want to know about financial aid, and so they're having to wait until the Cash for College. I'm not sure. So let me actually go over to that really quickly. So the financial aid night is general information. And so we don't ever expect that we're going to be able to answer every single individual unique question during a financial aid night to several hundred. So that's why they have those Cash for College workshops where they can give more individual attention. Here we go. And they are all over East Side. So what's nice is usually you go to a campus, but since they're virtually, there's really no reason that one is going to be, more appropriate than another. So whatever works with your schedule. So as soon as we have a flyer that gives us the links to all of these, we'll share those with families. So if you have a lot of individual financial aid questions, or you just need a lot of support, maybe this is your first time having a student apply for financial aid, these are great workshops to attend. You only have to attend one. If you need extra help, you can attend more than one. So the FAFSA that the students are going to fill out, it opens on October 1st. The deadline is March 2nd, although we don't encourage them to wait until the deadline. And so you can see there's a lot of hands-on help if you need it to get that support. And we'll tell you in advance, not only again how to join, so we'll give you the links, we'll also tell you what to bring, because there are certain documents that if you have them with you, you can get the most out of the experience. So we'll make sure that we have those.
I would also like to add to, before the event, you don't have to wait to look at the application. The reason why there's so many dates is because it's extremely detailed, and there's a lot of complicated situation with certain families and, living apart, remarried. So a lot of people don't know how to place that in the FAFSA. And so it's really important to take a look, because you're not going to know what you're going to need help with if you don't get stuck, right? So that's why there's a lot of dates. You might start it and be like, oh, this is easy, and then wait a minute. So that's why we also have many dates available.
I personally think that's probably why we don't have a lot of questions yet. If somebody hasn't looked at the application, you're like, oh yeah, I'll look at it. And then you really get stuck. And then you have all the questions. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, that's a great point. It definitely is. And so sometimes you don't know what to ask until you've actually delved into it. And I think the same is true. What I would encourage you, so this is a different topic, but for those applications, what I would really encourage is to have your son or daughter review these applications for CSU and UC before the presentation. The reason I would encourage you to do that is because then they're going to know what to ask. So that's a great point. Sometimes you don't even know what to ask unless you've had a chance to kind of play with the application first. So the same is true for the FAFSA. I would look it over before one of those workshops. For these particular workshops for college applications, I think seniors would get the most out of it if they've already created an account and looked through the application, so they know which questions to ask on the day of. So that's a great point to look at it before events, just so you know what to ask.
I would think especially for students who it's not only their information that's needed, but family financial information. So then you have to coordinate, because if my son comes and is like, Mom, I need this information, I'm like not prepared. So we kind of have to coordinate times and when we can work on it together, when I can get him the information and stuff like that.
That's a great point. And so just to help you guys out, before the event for the FAFSA, we will send out a worksheet that will tell you exactly what information to have, just so you're not running around the house trying to find documents that you put in a safe spot that now you don't remember where that safe spot is. And so, yeah, so definitely we'll help you guys by telling you everything that should be in front of you when you attend those workshops, just so you're prepared. So That's a great point. So anybody else that had, oh, we have one.
This is just a comment. You know, the FAFSA form has been simplified years after years. And I remember 15 years ago when I first started helping students with the FAFSA, it takes more than an hour, usually an hour and a half for a student to finish the FAFSA with every information ready. And now, you know, recently we see that students can finish in 30 minutes or less. And there's a lot of skip logic questions, which means that the next question is depends on your current answer. So I think it's more simplified every year, even though we hope it's even better. Okay, but that I think that is the good things.
Yeah, and just like the college systems, FAFSA also has chat support and a phone support that's readily available, and they're pretty good. Their customer service too.
Okay, we had another question come up in the chat. Do UCs have early action or early decision?
Unfortunately, they do not. So that is mainly for private universities.
And so some of our families, especially if you have some younger students, just so you know, some colleges, and again, it's private universities, allow you to apply early to their campus and get an early decision. Sometimes, so early decision is like binding, which means that if they get a commitment from that campus, they have to attend that campus and withdraw all their other applications. Early action is non-binding, so they get an early decision, but they don't have to commit to that campus. And so that's part of the private school process. And so sometimes students feel it gets them into a smaller applicant pool, and you know, makes colleges maybe more likely to commit to them because they haven't seen, you know, what's available in the regular pool. And so it's usually for stronger applicants that want an early decision, that know that campus is a top choice or the top choice if it's binding. So if students have questions on that, we presented on the common application for private schools yesterday, and that presentation is available as well. And I go over those topics in that as, you know, part of the presentation. So that would be under common application down here. But good question, UCs, no. Just the regular timeline, the November 1st through November 30th with a spring notification.
I have a question. Do you guys have a workshop for when acceptance letters are received? I know I recently graduated Mission College and applied to San Jose State. This is my first semester, but trying to understand what the different colleges were offering me and what they all meant. I'm not sure if the seniors would know. So is that something that you guys offer for them to understand, like how there's provisional and, you know, some will accept a lot quicker than others, or they'll offer them different financial aid packets to try to get you to go to their school. And I just know that's probably a little much for a 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old.
You know, that's actually a great idea. We have never had a workshop like that. So we have next steps workshops for students who are going to some of our local schools. But in terms of like comparing the different admissions offers, and, you know, we do have tools that are available to compare different financial aid packages, but it's never been a workshop. It's been more like senior newsletters. You know, we're actually kind of lucky this year because we have the advisory tutorial time. We can do a lot more presentations and workshops with students because they aren't in class that Wednesday. Whereas typically we're kind of restricted in how many times we can, you know, pull them out of class. And so this year we could probably do something, you know, like that. And instead of a senior advisor, which is basically like a newsletter that we give them, we could instead do a workshop on, you know, how do you compare those offers? You know, how do you make your decision? When do you need to make it by? So it's information that we give them in a newsletter, but you're right. I think it is overwhelming for them. So that's a great idea. I'll put it on the agenda so we can talk about, you know, when and how we would be able to have that workshop. So great.
I think that would be an awesome idea, just to get them to understand, to actually, I mean, yeah, we can read it, but it's still like, wait, what does that mean? What are they trying, you know? And I didn't know this. I know it now, and I can help my student through it, but I'm sure there's a lot of students who don't know, and a lot of parents.
Oh, absolutely.
We have a lot of first generation
Definitely.
kids.
It's just so different if they graduated, you know, out of the country. It's just the system is so different. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah. So any other, oh, we got a question. Okay, so talking about UCs and whether or not they can see if you've applied to any other UCs. And so I've never heard of that negatively impacting a student. I know sometimes people are concerned with private schools that they may see that you've applied to other private schools, which does not happen anymore. They're, you know, kind of restricted in how they can share that information. But no, I've not really heard that they've paid attention to whether or not you've applied to other UCs. Other counselors can jump in if they know the answer to whether or not UCs can actually see that you applied to another UC.
I believe the application goes directly to the UC itself, and it doesn't have like a summary of the other applications where they sent it to. I believe it's just directly to that one college. So UC Berkeley only sees the student application for UC Berkeley. I think if they, I think if they had something like that, it would come up in our counselor conferences, like, do you guys, you know, fight over students because you know that they're, you know, applying to UCLA? So I don't believe that that's the case, that they can see the other places that they applied, because they're just focused on who's best for their college. So even if they did, okay, that's great. Let's see if you're going to fit in here and if we're a good fit for your student.
I would want to add something. Same here. I'm not completely positive that they see how many UC students applying to. But one thing I know for sure that they in the UC conference, they mentioned that they will never communicate with each other to see what student they admit. You know, sometimes, you know, the UCLA accept the student and they will never reach out to UC San Diego to say, oh, are you guys also accept this certain student? So they told us they will never communicate to know who they accept. Yes.
Yeah. So great responses. I agree. I feel the same way. There's been no concern that we've heard so far about them comparing and only one giving an offer because they other found out that they were going to offer. So no, they're so focused. They are so overwhelmed with the number of applicants that applications they're reviewing. They're not comparing.
Yeah.
Or at least,
and they know students apply to multiple colleges. Yeah, last year I have one student apply to 25 colleges.
Oh wow. Yeah. We don't encourage that many, but we definitely encourage applying broadly, especially this year being such a unique year. You know, usually we can kind of look at averages and make some determinations of what might be a good fit for that student based on their performance. This year's a bit of a wild card because, you know, the SAT, ACT was a big component. And without that, I don't know how much the GPAs will fluctuate in terms of the averages for their campus. So definitely a year where I would encourage you to apply broadly just because there is some uncertainty. So if anybody else that's wanting to be brave and turn off their mic or turn on their mic or put something in the chat. This is definitely a unique year. We'll have, you know, several hundred students that we're talking to with no interaction. And so it's an awkward experience to present to nobody sometimes. And so definitely love to see you and hear from you. We miss that and we look forward to being back with you. Give people just a minute in case they're typing in the chat. So I'm not seeing anything else. So just again, a quick reminder, counseling presentations, you can access all the presentations we've done so far. The student version of what we did is a little bit more in depth. And so let me show you. If you have a copy of their graduation inventory, we walked them through that with a little bit more detail. I'll open in just a moment. So if you want the longer version of the presentation that we gave to parents on graduation in college, the students is the same presentation, but a little bit more in detail. So you are welcome to look at that and actually walks them through every single area of their graduation inventory and tells them, you know, what they should have earned in those areas. So again, look at those presentations. If you have any areas you want to recover, the schedule is for upcoming presentations. Counselors will have application help workshops. So make sure if your student needs help that they attend those Zooms that we advertise. Great suggestion with doing the workshop in terms of how to make their final decision and review the different offers that they have. And I think that's kind of covering it. Ms. Rodriguez and Ms. Nguyen, do you guys have any closing things you'd want to share with the parents?
Good luck. And we're here for you. We're here for you.
So one person had asked about like revealing their race in the application or leave it blank. So there's a lot of demographic information that is asked of students in the very beginning that is kept from the admissions officers when they're making their decision. So, you know, UCs, private schools, a lot of them are wanting demographic data to make sure that they really are supporting and, you know, bringing in some of those underrepresented groups. And so they do want people to share that demographic information, but a lot of it, again, is blocked from the people that are making the admissions decisions. And so, yes, I would encourage you to fill out everything accurately, and just rest assured that what doesn't need to be disclosed to admissions officers when they're making their decision is hidden. So, anybody else have anything before we head out? And hopefully, you know, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to the assigned counselor. You know, we're always happy to help you.
Ms. Shoopman, I think in the chat there's more questions.
Okay, where do we find stats for college? So it really depends on the system. And so like, for example, if you wanted to know the UC stats, so you could go to UC freshman profile. And this was part of our presentation as well for the students, so you have that information. Oh, I thought I was going to say no site. So here's the different campuses here at the bottom. And if you click on them, so for example, Berkeley, it tends to be a popular place with our students. You can look at their admit data, how many applicants, how many admits, and their overall admissions rate. And then you can also look at their averages down here in terms of average GPAs and test scores. And so one thing, again, this information is very, it's a little different because this whole area has been wiped out, right? Based on the pandemic and not having access to testing. And so we don't really know for sure that these averages that we've seen in the past are going to be the reality for this year. So that's why I was saying to apply broadly, because even though you can find this data, and I want to show you one that's, you know, maybe not so scary to look at. And so UC Merced, definitely a lot more reasonable GPA minimums. Or averages, I should say, not minimums. The minimum is 3.0, so more reasonable averages. You know, you can see that, but again, that could fluctuate quite a bit with this current year and not having the test scores. And so, you know, I just, again, apply broadly. Don't be afraid. Don't get scared off from averages because, again, average means they're just the average and there could have been students below and above. But also be realistic. And if you're, you know, the student's performance is quite a bit below the average, then make sure that those are not the only schools they're applying to, that they're applying to some that are, you know, kind of comparable with how they perform. And, you know, for lack of better terms, we set the safety school, maybe one where they're performing a little higher than what the averages have traditionally been, just so they know they have a spot for next year. And so again, asking about the race. So again, certain identifying, and I don't want to speak for every college. It's really not something that we are privy to, but there's a lot of demographic information that is not revealed to the application reader.
And again, the readers are just interested in the student's profile. So how they answered the questions, their course selection, how many AP classes. So they have a holistic review that they're mainly focused on. So they don't compare high schools. When they're looking at a student from Piedmont, they only look at other Piedmont students. So all of those things is what the reader is actually focusing on.
So I had a parent recommend Future Prime. College is usually, so it's not, this is something I'm not as familiar with, or not at all familiar with, I should say, as manage college lists, visually compare college choices. That sounds like a great thing for us to look into. So thank you so much. I will definitely look into to this here. Our students, a lot of our career in college tends to be on Naviance since our district pays for that platform. So it's always good to have reminders of other resources because we tend to kind of use that one heavily to keep students on one resource, but it doesn't always mean it's the best tool for certain things. So thank you for sharing that. So we'll look into that a bit further. Any other things that have come up in chat? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and Ms. Davis this morning. Again, email the assigned counselor if there's any questions that you have, and please encourage your students to attend those workshops that are applicable to them. Encourage them to read those applications in advance so they know what questions they want to ask during those workshops. And we'll be here to support you throughout the year. So thank you. Anything, Ms. Davis, you want to share before we end?
Well, I just wanted to thank the three of you for joining me this morning and answering all of these questions, including my own. And then also I want to remind the parents that there is no school next week. So we have the week off. The school will be closed. And so we will not have a Zoom with the principal next week because I am taking the week off and not doing any work type activities. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning, and have a wonderful week. And I hope all of you guys are able to relax over the fall break. And everybody take a deep breath. I think we all need just kind of some, let's decompress. But have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
All right. Okay.